June the 12th. Can you believe it's June the 12th already? Oh my goodness. Does it not seem that it's going by so fast? We're almost halfway through the year 2024, and it seemed like we just started. My name is Carl Krebs. This is Farm to Market for June the 12th, and I want to welcome you to the show. What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, with my colleague, my knowledgeable co-host, Harry Siemens, we're going to talk about a few things that I think you're going to want to know about. We're going to talk about a crop update. Let's get the update. What's happening in Manitoba? Let's go right into some good news about a strike that's being averted that would certainly interrupt supply chain. Let's talk about minimum wage consequences. We have some live data coming out of the United States. And then we're going to go into water curtailment. Where is it happening? Why is it happening? And what kind of impact is it going to have? Stay tuned. This is going to be a great show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm doing this show live on location here in Houston, Texas. And my friend, my co-host, Harry Siemens of Siemens Says is back in Winkler, Manitoba. And we're going to get this show started right away. And we've got some exciting stuff to share with you. Our endeavor, our intent, our goal is to try to give some context to what is driving food prices. How can you understand them? What are the threats to them? What is the reality of what's happening out there? You know, we're living in a world. It's all connected. It's all connected. And you cannot look at anything in isolation. You have to look at it in context. And that's what we're here to do tonight. So I want to welcome my friend Harry Siemens to the stage. Hello, Harry. How's it going, Harry, back there in Winkler, Manitoba?
You know, 3 months ago, it was 3 months till I got married. Now it's 3 days. You know, it's just things. And guess what? We had tornado warnings here just an hour ago. And, you know, we had some dark clouds and some weather stuff that was going, and they did spot a tornado, not here. But at the same time, you know, weather is such a huge part of what I do, you know, because of as an agricultural journalist. I mean, it's always, you know, is it too wet? Is it too dry? Did it hail? Did it storm? And I'm not making fun of it, but you know what? Just right now, we're probably some of the earliest times where they're actually baling alfalfa. And I saw my first round bales on Sunday, just north of Hornbean, Manitoba. And, you know, and it's interesting. I mean, and I've been watching a couple of guys, Warren Graydon, you know, he's on the east side of the Red River near Dominion City. And he's, you know what? He's talking about how he's doing his alfalfa. And it's all kinds of things. It's tricky business, you know, to get the alfalfa, you know, 1,500-pound bales. Do you wrap it or don't you wrap it? Do you leave it out there or don't you leave it out there, kind of stuff. But anyway, that's one of the first things that I thought I would mention. You know, we're already alfalfa.
Fair enough. Give us a quick synoptic summary of where things stand in Manitoba. I know you have a wide audience that you talk to, thousands of people on different platforms. So just in a couple of minutes, tell us what's going on, because, you know, people are always curious what drives prices up. We know supply chain interruptions is a popular term out there. So what's happening on the local economy with the ag producers right now?
Despite, I guess, the wet conditions, seeding progress, you know, was made throughout much of the province last week and again this week, as we're up to 92 to 95% complete as far as the total seeding is concerned in the province. And that's a lot of acres. I think got 14 million acres in total, maybe. Excuse me. And spring cereals, peas, and grain corn are about 97% complete. Canola and soybean planting advanced with 88% of canola acres and 92% of soybeans. Many of the unseeded acres are expected to be planted to canola. And then, of course, we're already into herbicide applications, which are ongoing, and growers continue to monitor fields for flea beetles. That's, of course, in canola. And I
Yeah.
also saw a report on grasshoppers. But here's the other thing: most of the fall rye is at full head emergence, and winter wheat is in late boot to early head emergence. And that, to me, I think was probably the more interesting part of the crop report this week. You know, when we're talking fall rye and full head stage and the winter wheat, this is stuff, crops that were planted last fall. And, you know, they're
Okay.
called winter and fall rye.
Right. So producers, farmers, grain farmers are probably pretty happy with where things are at right now. You mentioned about a tornado warning that happened in the, I guess, the Red River Valley area. Such an event would have disastrous consequences at this time or possibly not, given the growing season. What would a tornado do to a crop right now?
You know, at this point, that I had a chance to drive out to Winnipeg and back on the weekend, and the crops looked absolutely fantastic. The green grass of home, the green crops. So would a tornado do, would a tornado do damage at this stage? Probably not nearly as much as when the wheat would be like, you know, a foot tall, heading out, ripening. Tornado could just twist it and make a path
Yeah. Okay.
of black.
Yeah.
You know, so for
Karen.
now, you know what? I'm glad we didn't have to go. I didn't have to go take any pictures.
Okay, good, good, good. Hey, let's get to some good. You know, we don't want to be the purveyors of bad news. We want to bring some good news. There was a strike aversion that a strike was averted, I should say, with the Canadian Border Services Agency, which would have had, I think, really big impact on supply chain interruptions. As I was reading through the article, it's a deal that's. What more do you want to say about that one?
Well, you know, I've lived close to the border all my life, right? And we went across that border back and forth, and I know there are people that were concerned. That strike was initially supposed to be this coming Friday, which would be in 2 days. But they settled, they made a deal. They're not talking about the kind of settlement. And so that's good news, because why would we want to stop things at the border? As one person said, they are essential services, but they certainly know how to slow down. So it could have caused all kinds of, as you know better than
Yeah,
anybody, you know, as a trucker, you know, that's the last thing you need right now. And so,
it's just
hey, it's good.
just gonna say, when that happens, truckers start to change their patterns, their routines. I was just talking with my supervisor, and he would say, go get up at 2 o'clock to try to beat the rush. But then if everybody does that, you've got still the same congestion at the border. So you can win it in some ways, but long lineups add to costs of operations. And, it still bewilders me. Let me say it that way, that these people were without a contract for 2 years, and looking at the essentiality of what they do. How is it that we can allow this to come to an 11th hour kind of deal, because it was Friday at 12:01 midnight, they're going on strike? Like, we can't put our country in such a gridlock, but it seems we get there. It's like the U.S. economy, where they have to pass a bill in the last few hours, otherwise the government shuts down. How is it that we are so irresponsible in managing these assets in order to show, or now in order to allow the flow of goods and services to continue? It just bewilders me, Harry. What do you think about that? Give us your personal opinion.
Putting on my cynic's hat, and I don't do it very often, but at the same time, you know what? Here's a government that's, they've got the media in their back pocket. They can say and do just about everything. So here they're moving along, moving along, moving along. Oh, now they're the heroes. They settled the deal. They settled the deal. Come on. That's
Yeah.
part of it. And the other thing is, what does it cost you and me to settle that deal? I mean, I don't believe, if they give them raises, that's fine. That's all part of the deal. But, we talk about food prices. What's causing food prices? Well, all kinds of things like that. And had it gone to a strike, wow, we would have had a much better or much more difficult time of things right now. But I really believe that some of this stuff is actually set up, because here they are, the essential services. So it's
Yeah.
a setup making it look like, oh, yeah, we just solved this problem.
We created the problem in order to solve it and make ourselves look good.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
thinking of government. It's a thinking of liberalists who think, oh, we'll allow it to get to a point where we're going to pull it out of the fire at the end and make ourselves look good. And you know what? It's absolutely irresponsible government that puts us in this position where we end up running right up to the wire and wonder what's going to happen, because you shut down a border of a country with $774 billion a year of goods and services flowing across that border with just the United States. We're not talking about ports where international shipments come in from other countries. We're not talking about the airport, which also brings in goods from other countries. Just in the American trade, 774 is the estimate in billions of dollars that we do with the United States. You know what? That shuts down so many things. Grocery stores. So let's make it relevant. What are we talking about? Grocery stores are only days away from empty shelves. Hours, some people believe, because the timeliness of goods and services coming in. There's so much timing involved with produce that comes in, that it can only, enters into the large distribution centers and goes out almost immediately. And I was part of that industry. I knew full well that our deliveries were timed, because they would take the goods off our trucks, and moments later, minutes later, or hours, it's already en route to a store. So you talk about supply chain interruptions, there's your big one right there, right away.
And how much time do they have when they put that 30% discount on here at the local superstore, right? Before you know it, and yes, so timing, as you know, is critical. Timing is critical in application of crop protection products, weed control, all of that stuff. Timing is so vital. So yeah, I'm glad they didn't strike, but at the same time, it seems like they also passed that bill today, not in the Senate, but in the House of Commons, the one on the what's the tax? The tax on death tax and those kinds of things. So I should have looked at it more closely. But you know what? That's a huge. I just looked at it briefly on Twitter, and how much that will affect people that want to retire, and
absolutely. Tax and all that. You know what? We'll deal with that, because it's part of our cost of living. When the more I look at it, and with each show we do, I'm more and more convinced that everything is intricately connected to everything else. And it's like nature. When you interrupt one thing, you upset everything else. And that's what we're dealing with. And the end result is we deal with three things as human beings. We're concerned about food, shelter, and clothing, and the cost of those. And they're all related to this market that is so intricately woven into itself.
The whole aspect of the tax, absolutely. I mean, initially, my fiance, obviously she's moving to Winkler from Steinbach, but because she had a house, she was going to invest in money in a condo. But the taxes don't allow her to do that. If you have a second house, it's unbelievable. So you know what? And that's the new tax laws that have now come in. So we're, it's some days, you absolutely wonder, but you know what? We still live in the best country in the world. But can you only imagine what's going on in the other countries?
You're absolutely right. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful to live in a city like Winkler, in a province like Manitoba, in a country of Canada. But to me, I always look at it that we can do better. The fact that by comparison we compare ourselves to other countries is, to me, a moot point, because I look at it and say in some ways it's justification for a lot of the actions that are being taken. And I'm not going to get into this one, but I'll just float it out there. Everybody in Winkler has by now received their notification of a tax increase. And I'm talking to seniors. I am in that age bracket, but I'm still working. And I'm talking to seniors that say, I don't know where I'm going to get those extra $200 or $300 or $500 from, because I'm certainly not getting an increase on the earnings. Where does it come from? It comes out of the existing pool of money that people are already stretching to try to make those ends meet. And we know, again, the three essentials have to be met: food, shelter, and clothing. And I keep looking at it, say, you know what? Just because it might be that we are in this favorable position doesn't mean that we can't do better. We can, and we must try to do better.
Especially when it comes to our infrastructure. You know, I mean, we can spend money on all kinds of things, but we see our infrastructure and it's not in good shape. No matter where you go, you know, you have to be careful. You talked about it. And all of this, again, costs. You know, you take the farmer, you know, he's driving down the road. I mean, he's got this $1 million equipment and a $500,000 air seeder, cultivator, whatever it may be, sprayer. And he's driving out. And you know what? As the old saying goes, you know, you avoid one pothole, but you hit the other one. And so, you know, and so that's the kind of stuff. And the, you know, a good friend of mine, the same fella, you know, he replaced a shaft on his baler. And it was $7,800 to replace, like he says it. So he would have to go to the hospital to get his heart restarted when he got the bill, you know. And absolutely, he said, fortunately, when I put it on, it quit shaking. It was worth it. But at the same time, he still had to pay for it.
Yeah. And again, the question is, where does that come from? Let's move on, because there's something here I really want to get into. Let's move on to the consequences of minimum wages. And I was reading an article, comes out of California, where the minimum wage has now been raised to $20. And we're seeing already the ripple effect in the market as restaurants are closing. In-N-Out Burger, by example, is a bargain basement burger joint. You go to an In-N-Out Burger, it's less fancy than McDonald's, and it's priced to be an affordable eating outlet for people that really, you know, have to be concerned about that few dollars. And they announced their price increases, and they also announced the closing of many locations. And Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, continues to believe that raising the minimum wage is somehow going to answer the problem of people being able to make ends meet. But now you can't even go out to eat. You can't go out. A McDonald's Big Mac meal in the U.S. is approaching $15. It's already past that in Canada. Minimum wage and the doctrine that goes behind it, and the very socialist aspect of minimum wage, has a dangerous ripple effect that I don't think anybody has fully given a study to understand it. It seems to come out of a very heartfelt argument that somehow people need more money, but it has deep ripple effects.
Probably far bigger than anybody even imagined. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to other restaurant chains, you know, because, and all of this reflects, as you and I have talked, right back to the grocery store. I mean, if that's what's going on over there, then this is what's going on over here. So, you know, it's really a challenge. And you know, I've been living out of, you know, I have no kitchen. I've been living different places. So I've been trying to eat out a little bit. And then and just as I said today, you know, I went and picked up something for $10 or $12. But had I gone to the grocery store, I would have spent 120 maybe, and stuff that I didn't all need. Right now, I'm good.
Yeah.
So you know what, that, you know, and I like to also put it in perspective. I know in the U.S. it's a U.S. dollar, but anybody that's traveling to California and wants to relocate or whatever it may be, all of a sudden it's 35 percent on the exchange. So that $20 minimum increase, boom, it's more like $35 an hour. Put that into perspective.
And they're trying to pass it on, which they have to pass it on somewhere because labor costs is by far one of the biggest costs of overhead and managing a store. Your operational cost is largely affected by minimum wage. So there is this bleeding heart liberal mentality that we've got to pay people more. But that's only passing it on. So the same people that are earning minimum wage can't afford to eat at the places that they work at. And the families can't be there.
Yeah, I mean, you can pick just about any restaurant, whether it's Winkler, Altona, Morden, or whatever. You go out for two people, what do you pay? You can very easily spend $60. You add a little tip, you're at 65, maybe 70, and that's for two people. And so, how often are you going to do that? I mean,
I went to a favorite burger joints, well known. I won't name them because they operate a great operation. And we ordered ahead and stopped in there, and it's $32 for a cheeseburger combo for two people. And I thought that's a record price in my mind to pay. And the burger's good. And but here we go again with minimum wages and the argument for and against it. And I understand the need to help people. But you know what? You can't legislate and you can't tax your way into prosperity. It's never been done and it never will be done. The forces of a free market economy are best left alone. And when the government interferes, we see the consequence of it. Here we have another example. And you say, oh, that's California. People listening say, oh, California. Well, it's kind of crazy in California anyway. Listen, folks, when America sneezes, Canada gets a cold. That's a fact. Yeah. And what happened in California, in my opinion, has been for many years a testing ground, a proving ground for all things that are unnatural and somewhat extreme. And we have a government here that is committed to social programs. And that's the problem. The government showing up with the answer is the problem, not the answer. And this argument, and I don't want to sound unkind, but it is passing its way through the system, Harry. Your store prices, the food prices that we pay in the grocery store are also influenced by minimum wage. Not just restaurants.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right across the board. I mean, we have, many things like that. But, there's the Proposition 12 that's costing people much more for meat in California. So no, it's going to be a real challenge to see what other states will do. Sometimes, the one state is a testing ground. Other people pull back and say, you know what, we can't see that happening. So we'll see, what is going to happen.
Let's move on because our agenda today would warrant an hour discussion, but we don't want to keep people here that long. Let's move on to what's happening in Idaho, in potato country of America. I've been to Idaho. I've delivered seedling potatoes to Idaho. What a huge business that is. And the recent government has announced a water curtailment. Harry, you've read this more than I have. I've quickly read it, but tell us what implications that has, and then take us right away into what's happening in Canada, in one of the biggest cities in Canada.
Well, the state of Idaho has put a water curtailment order, which is basically a water shutoff order on literally 500,000 acres of farmland. That's a lot of potatoes. A lot of these farmers, this impacts about 6,400 water users, but a lot of these farmers that are farming this land have already invested thousands of dollars per acre to grow potatoes. So, yep. And then there's a fellow by the name of Trevor Belknap. I operate a family farm, he said, a fifth generation family farm in the Snake River Valley of eastern Idaho. To sum up what he's saying, we talk about ripple effects. He says this goes all the way down. He says if you don't have water, land is useless. That was his last. Without water, the land doesn't have any value here. And so he says it's going to affect everybody, anybody, and anywhere. And I double checked, as I so often do, because you have to be really careful. where you're at with the information. But there was a local paper in the same area printed the same article saying this is what's going to happen. So you know what? That's a sad commentary. I mean, we saw it in Morden. Luckily, we got lots of rain, but Morden was, last year they they couldn't take showers very often. At least they weren't supposed to because they were short the water. And I flew over the lake of Lake Minnewaska with my friend, and it was really, really short. But at the same
okay, but we can understand that. But Harry, give it more context. The rivers in Idaho are flowing abundantly. The reservoirs are full. So does this not, as I think somebody said in one article, give credence to the conspiracy theorists that this is an act of sabotage? Because why announce it now when the farmers have committed the money and the resource? It costs $4,000 an acre to plant potatoes. What a huge investment. And now they're saying, oh, we're not going to give you the water. Well, you and I know. What percentage of a potato is water? It's got to be darn near 90% of it.
Totally. And you're absolutely right. And not only did he say, are the streams full and the rivers full, there's snow in the mountains. There's snow in the mountains. And so why? Absolutely why. We're coming quickly to the end. Let's go touch on the Calgary. Give me some of the details on the Calgary thing.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Calgary Council. This is a really interesting issue. And it's right now happening that City Council in Calgary is going to institute a water curtailment as well. And here's the reason why, folks. A water main break in a certain part of the city that is an outward manifestation of low infrastructure investment. Why do water main breaks? Because they're old, because they're not investing in it, they're not updating it. So they're taking the opportunity, and that's what it is, to rather than take the responsibility for it, they're going to take actions and they're going to curtail water use in Calgary. This city, this council, and this mayor are mental. You seriously question what sound mind would say, oh, we have a water main break and we're going to now curtail water. That's like saying my car broke down, so I'm going to ban cars because you know what? They're not reliable anymore.
You're absolutely right. And in Calgary, not only are they concerned about what's happening initially, and I was on Twitter just before we came on the air, and people were saying, yeah, initially they said this, and then they said this, and then they said, 6 to 7 days. Now we have no idea, he says, when that water will come back. And so, it's going to be an interesting time. The real cynic will say, and is already saying, what are they going to do? Are we ever going to get back to what was normal before? This is a way of testing the controls that they like to put on. Some people just can't live without having some control over other people. And you know what? Let's
put it in perspective, Harry. How many people have planted gardens in Calgary? How many garden markets are going to be affected? How many local markets are going to be affected by this water curtailment in Calgary? Now, let's go even deeper, because we saw it in Winkler when we had a water restriction 2-3 years ago. So a guy like me, I'm on the road. I miss my day of watering, and I come home, and I've just got a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days at best, to take care of the property. So I'm out there washing things down that need to be washed. I'm watering what needs to be watered, and I'm doing it on the wrong day. You know what happens with these curtailments, Harry? Right away comes a snitch line, because who's going to monitor it? Now we turn the citizens against each other. We saw this in COVID, Harry. It was all a testing ground as to whether or not we would be a community that pulls together or pulls apart. And you know what? This will happen. We're going to have self-deputized people who think it's their green responsibility to report their neighbor, not knowing the facts about why he might be on his off day doing what he's doing. All of this speaks to a control mechanism, my friend. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And so, we came from Idaho where, they shut down the water for so many people. Now we go to Calgary and there's a big city. I don't know what the population is right now, but as you said, all those different things. So where does it stop? And so at this point, you know what? I guess we're going to have to stop. And I have a comment that I would like to make coming to the end of the show again. I mean, and luckily we can continue again next week. But at the same time, I
Next week you're off, my friend. You're getting married on Saturday, and you're getting the week off.
I know, and I was just going to say, you know what? I have the opportunity to have a second chance at doing even better in my second marriage. I'm looking forward to that. Today, I shout out to all the husbands and the fathers and the dads. We got Father's Day coming up. Happens to be
Mhm.
this Sunday, and so you know what? Let's make sure we as dads, we as husbands, we as fathers, we continue to do what we need to do. So you know what? We've got a great province. We got a great crop out there. You know what? Somewhere, sometime, somehow, we'll see you again. That's Siemens says. And next time I'm coming on, I'll be a married man.
Well, an early congratulations to you, and welcome back to the group. To those that are married, and I wish you all the best, my friend. It's an absolute pleasure to do the show with you, and I look forward to meeting your fiance, your soon-to-be bride, Ange. And we're going to continue this because I really think we have something to say to people. So thank you very much, Harry. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
All right, folks, listen. At times, it feels like we're just bringing bad news. But it is the news. And sometimes it is the bad news, and sometimes it's the good news. But to those of you that call on the name of Jesus, those of you that worship the eternal God, the creator God that we have not been given the spirit of fear, no matter what government agency would like to do. We have been given sound mind and good judgment. If it is that this needs to get worse before it gets better, trust me, God is in this, and we need to remain diligent and trust God. The farmer, he trusts God, whether he wants to or not. He has to trust him. Has to trust him for the right weather to come, to bring the right amount of rain, to bring the right amount of sunshine, and to create that window of opportunity where he can harvest it. And I maintain our awareness of what's happening in this world is critical. Be aware, get involved, and at some point when you have that opportunity, speak the truth to power. They need it more than they realize. And our job as citizens, concerned citizens, is to speak that truth in love, to remain diligent, stand firm, and trust God with the results. That's all I can say right now. Thank you for watching this, those of you that are watching live, and those that will watch it later as we post it. This is Carl Krebs for Things That Matter. And when it comes to our food, we certainly know that's one of those things that matter. God bless. We'll see you again here soon. In 2 weeks, in fact.